What's going on, Soul Tribe? And welcome to Alchemist Astrology. Justin here, and are you ready to get into them lunar shenanigans, which is just the astrology of the moon, what sign it's in, what phase it's in, when it happens to be going void of course, and just to get a feel and navigate the aspects and the transits that the moon is making with the other celestial bodies. It's good to sync up with that good old moon, and the moon is not a whole. I mean, when we talk about getting a feel for the week with the moon, starts off the moon is making a couple of squares there. There's some at least some goodness kind of buffering that we have I have the square with the moon and Mars. We have the square with the moon and Saturn that's going to be happening. But both the benefics are involved in that again. So I think that there is at least a bit of something that's trying to not make it a worst case sort of thing. And then we get a bit more ease as we start to navigate towards the middle of the week. There's a lot of trines that are coming through, a lot of supportive aspects. And then it kind of ends on a bit of a nice one with Jupiter there, but there's still some sort of misunderstanding or miscommunication, something that's going on when the moon forms an opposition with Mercury towards the end of the week. So a couple of things to unpack there, but we'll work through all this together. Now, before we jump into that, if you want to support the work that I'm doing further, down in the description box is a link for my Patreon page, so definitely check that out. There is a monthly podcast that I do in there, as well as a chance to get a personalized monthly report for me for every month. So that's something that you're interested in. Definitely go check that out. But let's go ahead and jump into this thing here. I'm going to be covering the week of March 24th through the 30th, 2026, and let's get started because we get to the 24th here, and this again we start off a bit of a mixed bag because the moon's in Gemini, so this would be one to first off, or the moon's getting towards the end of Gemini here, but this is looking to see what if you have a lot of, or what placements do you have in the mutable portions of your chart. That's going to be Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, because the moon and any planet is going through that is going to be working more personally with you. It may be a more active period of time. And especially too here with the moon going through that house of Gemini, what is that for you? For example, with this chart here, which is a Leo rising, I happen to have that. It's going through the house of friendships, so that could be a good time to reach out to friends and things along those lines. Maybe think about doing some work towards your hopes and dreams, doing some planning around those sorts of stuff. Maybe joining some sort of group activity could be something that's coming up with the moon there. Again, that's on a personal note. On a more kind of mundane sense, when we think about that first aspect with the moon squaring Mars, that's a tough one. The squares are when the celestial bodies are 90 degrees apart from another. So as you see here, when they're in the same modalities as we have here with the mutable placements. And where does that happen exactly? It happens at about 17 degrees and 16 minutes of Gemini and Mars in Pisces. And Mars is one of the malefics. And so when you have a hard aspect with the malefic, that is generally, and especially when we're thinking about when the moon is waxing in light, that was something in Firmicus Maternus' book that mentions that difference between, and I've been exploring that a lot more, seeing how that looks compared to when the moon is waxing hard aspects with Mars, or waning hard aspects with Saturn, because those were thought to be the more intenser ones of the two squares that we get in relationship to the moon each month. So this would be one of the more harder ones, since the moon is waxing in light while it's forming this square with Mars. And Mars is that idea of force that could be this. There could be something where there is a fight with friends, for example, or some sort of disagreement that's happening. Mars was thought to be when certain like governments and embassies are under difficult situations, or this could even be when we're talking about the moon representing like the body, could represent the gathering of the masses. I would say just be mindful of any sort of like colds, anything along those lines. If you're noticing that you're feeling under the weather or things along that, and just taking care of the body, being mindful of those sort of injuries. I'd even be mindful of just even like kind of of travel. What the moon can be, one of the significators could be travel. So just making sure that we're not speeding around this time. I mean, we shouldn't be doing speeding in anyways, but just being mindful of how we're traveling, even whether it be by vehicle, by foot. paying attention to one's surrounding. Mars can lead to accidents and things, so that would just be some things that could be happening there. But it gives this idea of there's this severing significator that comes with Mars. There's this, of course, there's this violence, this warlike things that can come through there. So that would be, this could be a particular combative time. But it's interesting because Venus is there as well, forming the sextile with the moon. And if you're watching the video of this chart, or if you're watching the video version, I have that chart of the moon forming a sextile with Venus up here, and that's when the celestial bodies are 60 degrees apart from one another. So there's this complementary energy when you think between the fire and the air, and then between water and earth, as air and fire were thought to be more active, or they were considered the diurnal signs. And so when you think about that, let's say, for example, if there was some sort of, let's say, martial, let's say some kind of fight, there could be this opportunity here with the sextile, because they're like the trines as far as they are a beneficial aspect, but they're just not as, it requires a bit more initiative with the sextiles. So this could be some sort of reconciliation that could be happening potentially, maybe between something, between however broad we want to expand this on the mundane sense, maybe between countries, maybe between friends or personal things. Maybe you see it happening between family members, whatever that happens to be. There could be a chance to, because this combination gives me that, okay, the thing has been said with Mars, there's something that's happened, but here we're trying to bring things together. Or, even a better, I think even a better one, this could be, let's say, with Mars was typically related with like fire. Let's say there was some sort of fire that happened, or maybe maybe there was some sort of accident where a building was torn down, or something was some sort of thing. This Venus sextile here to, okay, yes, we may be mourning the loss of that thing that was there, but what are some beauty that we can build in replace of that? How can we deliver some more life and to make this a more lovely place again, to express some creativity or anything, or any sort of those kind of illusion things? How can we all even just band together? How can this create this sense of community to work to clean up the mess that's happened? So that could be another kind of nice thing that could potentially come out of this, with this combination of aspects there. But yeah, that's kind of how we're starting off the week there. Then we get to the 25th of March, and the moon is going to move into its home sign of Cancer at about 3:32 a.m. Pacific time. And again, if you're watching the video, I have the moon, that chart of the moon entering into at 0 degrees of Cancer here. Now, on a personal level, again, you want to look to see where you have Cancer in your chart, because this is where the moon does its best work. The moon's is at home here over these next couple of days. It's here once a month, and so this is a good time to just kind of feel into that. Maybe you got a Capricorn rising here, so this could be a time where we're paying attention to those closer relationships in our life, or even thinking about building some new potential relationships that's happening there. Jupiter's going through your 7th house too, so that's a bonus. So that would be one way to kind of think about that on a personal level. And if you have a lot of cardinal placements, that's going to be Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or Aries. This may be a more active time for you, so that's something to tune into. But when we look at it on a mundane sense for the moon's going to be talking with all the celestial bodies. This is going to be a busy couple of days that the moon is in Cancer. It's going to start, and as we're even looking here, if you're looking at the chart, the Sun and Saturn are just separating from their conjunction that happens once a year. So this would even be a very interesting thing to see what is kind of brewing here at the start of this synodic cycle, with the Sun and Saturn kind of going through there. So that's even kind of interesting to watch. But the moon's going to form a square with both of those two within about 8 hours or so, probably about close to eight hours. Give or take. I have to look to see exactly what time. Yeah, about 11 and 12. So is going to have that pretty much right down the line, and then it's going to have some trines with Mercury and Mars, which is more positive there, which is nice. Have an aspect with Venus, even if it's a bit of a harder aspect with Venus, still talking with the benefic, and it's going to have that monthly conjunction that it has with Big Papa. And now this is going to be nice because the Jupiter's direct, and so this is going to be that feel of Jupiter's work coming in since Big Papa's been gone. gone direct. So this is going to be nice for the moon to see an awakened Jupiter. But before we get to that, we got to get past Saturn. And so when we were talking about first that square with Saturn is the other malefic. And so again, this is going to be maybe a bit of a tenser times there. Saturn can indicate those times of delays. There could be these challenges, these restrictive sort of qualities, imprisonment, lawsuits, subversions of business, again, kind of a secretive energy. Even Saturn can be secretive in their trickery. That's what I want, the real kind of interesting delineation that I always appreciated about Saturn, that I don't think Saturn gets enough of. But this could be where there's some sort of, with that square with Saturn, there's some sort of tension with that, some sort of waiting for some sort of information to potentially come out there. Maybe we're waiting on the results of some sort of trial that's happening when we talk about Saturn dealing with lawsuits, or maybe there's something that's we're seeing where where business is closing down. I just saw where that the CBS radio is getting ready to close down, shut down after I think 99 years or something along those lines. And those things that maybe even how things are even able to withstand the test of time. Maybe with that moon squaring Saturn, we're seeing maybe some maybe thinking on a local level, you could see where maybe some businesses are shutting down. Maybe there wasn't enough funding that was happening somewhere. And then we get to that moon square the sun dealing with example of those in that sort of prominent, like those who are in charge of who has authority over the masses, considered the master, the ones that ruled over countries and places. There may be that tension between those forces. There's something that's going on there. Maybe your boss makes a decision that you don't care for. That maybe in the long term, that Saturn, it may not always be entirely bad with that Saturn. This is a waxing square with Saturn. So maybe this is something that, hey, we have to make these changes that may not feel great in the short term, but when we work in the long term with Saturn, thinking about Saturn, it's going to be for our benefit. And that could be where that moon trine Mercury could come in. It's maybe not having the best news to deliver, where we may have wanted more sort of an immediate fix, but at least it's something that could be one way. Or this could even be where maybe someone, this would be, I think, in an ideal situation, maybe someone happens to want the opinion when we get of that Mercury trine the moon, get the opinion on how to move something forward, to do some brainstorming, to get some ideas on a long-term issue. This could be even a chance where someone happens to step up to a challenge that's happening when we think about these squares. It doesn't maybe have to always, or doesn't necessarily have to just be something that's impeding. Maybe we're going about trying to resolve something. This is another example when I was kind of meditating on this. It gave the idea of when a company goes on, or when people go on a strike, there's been some sort of restriction that's been imposed, something that's been, we're looking for some sort of justice here, some sort of something to be rectified here. And so again, with that square the sun, this could be where a person gets the authority figures may be feeling challenged, and then that trine Mercury opens that, okay, let's open a dialogue for this thing. Let's figure out what do you need? How can I help to meet you halfway on this, to where where there's a win-win situation here. So that could be where we could see something come up with that. But with that moon square the sun too, I always think that there could be just something with prominent figures that come in. Maybe the public opinion of someone in prominence changes. Maybe there's something that is revealed with that moon square Saturn, in a sense. The sun shines lights on things, on the secretive things. Maybe that Saturn's been doing, that's been cooking up. So a lot of things that could potentially kind of come up with that, where as the moon kind of starts off on the 25th here, or wraps up that kind of time there, builds up those transits there for that one. Then we get to the 26th of March, and this one's definitely a bit of a smoother time. Then we get that conjunction with Jupiter that's happening, and the conjunction is when the celestial bodies are in the same zodiac sign, especially when they're on the same degree, as they're kind of building up with that. And it's lovely to see when the moon is, and if you get to see this, if the sky happens to be clear for you when the moon is when the moon moves astrologically into Cancer. Check that out. Moon Jupiter conjunctions are really nice. The moon will be almost at a, oh, it'll just be just past its first quarter, because we, when the moon formed that square with the sun, we're about a week into the lunar cycle now with the first quarter phase. So that'll be nice to see that a fuller moon kind of coming up there with that Jupiter. It's a really beautiful sight. So that would, even just say on an astronomical thing, definitely get out there and see that. That's gonna be really nice, and you might even be able to see it, get in there to get to see Venus setting too. So you get to see both the benefics in the sky. So that would be a really kind of nice way to go into that from the 25th to the 26th, and doing that even on the same day here. But when you think about moon conjunct Jupiter, Jupiter is one of the benefics. It's the greater benefic, and Jupiter represents those things of life giving, really. When you think about it, Jupiter is thought to be childbearing, engendering. It brings the friendships of great people, prosperity, salaries. So this could be where there's some sort of promise that's coming with Jupiter, some sort of justice that's maybe being sought after. We were talking about those themes of like lawsuits and stuff with Saturn and Mars. So maybe that's something that's coming there, where we're seeing some sort of justice that's being happened, or maybe someone rising through the ranks. For example, maybe you had a boss that wasn't doing so great, and then it was replaced by someone who's wanting to actually come in and fix the place, who wants to bring in more finances, who wants to, help create an inheritance and things like that, who wants to create this camaraderie, this fellowship that's happening. But this even gives me maybe something with, I would think maybe even those involved in like some sort of like religious sectors and things. Maybe we see something come up mundane as far as those lines, some acts of charity maybe that happens to come up during this period of time. Or we could see where maybe there's some sort of maybe new jobs that are being developed. Even looking at that moon trine with that conjunction with Jupiter, and that coming up with Mars there, that combination with Mars as well, taking some sort of actions. Someone coming into it like an office holding. We could see something along those lines that are potentially kind of happening there, I think, with that combination. And it's interesting with the moon squaring Venus, because when you think about the squares, those are tensor aspects. And so this gives me, maybe with that moon trine Mars, maybe there was for example, let's say there was a separation that needed to happen. Maybe some people were in partnership, but you go to cancel that relationship in order to welcome in some sort of new, better thing that's coming in there. There could be some sort of evolution that's going there. And maybe there could be some tensions with that, that maybe changes how we relate to things, how we appreciate, thinking about those Venusian sense, like what do we appreciate as tasteful? Like our taste may be changing, or it challenges the taste of people, the convenience of people. Or maybe it's something that I just saw. For example, I'll give you an example. I was reading something that was talking about how there's these like robot umpires now that's changed the game of baseball. And so where you got this new initiative, when you think about this new thing that's said to bring in this new, make things more fair with that, let's say moon conjunct Jupiter, this moon trine Mars, there's that initiative has been taken. The masses were a little on the fence about it, but as we start to, I don't watch baseball, but I would imagine that we're maybe feeling a little tense about it. But as it starts to become more of a regular thing, it's just like, oh, okay, like we're starting to adapt, and we're learning to love it. That Venus square first, we might have loved to hate it, but then we came to love it. So that's just a little random example there. Or even too, like there could be this initiative that's taken with Jupiter that's said to be good, but the moon square Venus is, how do I stay devoted to this thing, that's said to, that's going to be for my betterment. So that could be another way of sort of delineating that sort of process. But again, this feels hopefully like a bit more of a positive pocket that's happening, that's potentially happening here. But this Yeah, that square just has me thinking that there's going to be some sort of changes in relationships because of that. Maybe even like there's a new sense of faith that's coming with Jupiter, with that moon conjunct Jupiter. We're going in a different direction possibly, and that's maybe putting some tension on some relationships as we adapt to this new. It reminds me of when I made my switch from what I was doing and then trying to do, or maybe making more astrology my full-time thing and more of my focus. Like that's a bit, definitely put a bit of a, it's been an adjustment for my relationships, but it's been a fairly positive one, I would say. So that would be something along those lines, or I would potentially compare that to. Then we get to the 27th, and we have the moon is going to move into the sign of Leo. And if you're watching that again, if you're watching the video, I have the moon at 0 degrees of Leo here. And so this is again looking at where you have Leo in your chart, because whenever the moon and other planets are going through there, and just know what themes that are going to be coming up there. For example, if you have Aries rising the moons and other planets going through there, are going to move through your fifth house of children and just general just pleasures and things when we think about those kind of those fifth house themes. And friendship can be another thing that comes up there, the doing of good deeds, all that nice stuff, creative pursuits with the fifth house. But also too, you want to look to see if you have a lot of fixed placements. That's going to be Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus, because those are going to be more active periods of time for you. And when we look at the lay of the land for the moon here, just on a mundane sense, the moon is a bit quieter than it was when the moon was in Cancer. It's only going to talk with about three of the celestial bodies. There's going to pretty much all these planets in Aries, all this fire that's going on here. The moon's not being witnessed by Jupiter or by Mars, that's that positive with Mars. But we still have that with Saturn. But at least we have some that very positive aspect from Venus as well, that we're going to be having all this trine energy, got all this ease that's going to be happening. And and if I didn't mention, the moon moves into Leo at about 7:10 a.m. Pacific time. Now, when you think about the moon forming a trine with Saturn, again, the trines are the most positive aspects. They bring about this sense of ease, this sense of flow. They were thought to be kind of Jupiterian in nature. And so this could make it where, let's say there's these new restrictions that are put on there. I'm thinking about how, just on a base level, I've noticed just how prices have been going up, and this could be where we're not feeling great about that. There can be this, okay, now, even though there's this, we may not know how long this is going to last, so how can I better, I find it helps, the trying to make it easier to withstand those kind of Saturnian things, or to make better use of them, where it's like, okay, I remember listening to this podcast where this person was saying that they grew up being very frugal, and where that wasn't the greatest way to grow up. Once they've kind of themselves more established, now they don't really, they don't live, they live too comfortable by their means. And they were saying, even compared to when they were living, now they think in they live in a way of excess, in a sense. But it could be that where those times where we had to be a bit tighter with the budget and things can again help make one more resourceful, to find other means to get food, to get different resources, to get whatever that happens to look like. And then when we think about the moon trining the sun, again, that can be that idea of when we think of authorities, it doesn't have to just be authorities like when we think about governments of things. It could be those who are responsible for those aids, those relief, when we're under times of restraint. That how do we reach out to, let's say, our food banks, for example, and not just going to take from there, but even volunteering there to kind of help to alleviate some of this sense, creating that sense of community there. There could be where, let's say, if we had restrictions on, when we think about the moon in terms of like travel, The moon had some significators with travels and wanderings, and so where maybe we not be able to travel like we would like, how do we maybe go to play, how do we explore our current area in a different sort of way? Maybe there's aspects of it that we haven't experienced because we want to always see wanted to go outside of, but maybe seeing how what your community or has to go around, or what your neighborhood has to provide there. That could even be something too with the moon trying the sun, seeing people maybe coming up and just as an example, just kind of working with this, just maybe creating some sort of like neighborhood event. I'm just thinking people coming into that spotlight with the sun, for example, doing some sort of public event. So that could be another thing that could potentially kind of come up there. But yeah, the trine energy, that's I like this little time in Leo. That's definitely a lot more positive than when they was when they that last one, when they were going through those planets in Aquarius, and when we had all that fixed energy in there. So this is, I feel like, a nicer moon. The sun is exalted, the ruler of the moon in this. It's the sun separating from Saturn, so that's even real positive too, working its way towards Big Papa, forming a square there. So that's that, not too bad for a moon in Leo. And then when we get to the 28th, the moon's just sort of moving its way through to Leo. I set the chart towards the end of the day on the 28th here. And this is just something too, like when we have these little pockets of days where there's not necessarily an aspect completing, but there's one building, that this is where it's these pockets of times that we're paying attention to what's happening when aspects are building, not necessarily on the exact day that's are happening. Those exact points are usually thought to be the climax of those things, but it's all of that stuff when you think about applying versus separating the aspects. And that's really shows through with the moon, because it moves the fastest of the celestial bodies. It's good to see what potentially, hopefully, positive things are really kind of coming up here, because the next aspect that the moon's going to have is that trine with Venus. And again, when we have the trine with the benefics, that's the most positive way to receive the benefics. So there could hopefully be, maybe there's some sort of when we think of Venus and representing with women, there could be maybe some in a mundane sense, maybe someone of prominence, a female of prominence, coming into the, maybe we hear about some sort of work that a woman has started, or that is kind of bringing together there, or even just in general, just this Venus is that coming together of friends, that friendship, that companionship, coming in cheer. So this could be some sort of celebrations of some sorts. Maybe there's some sort of events that are going on in your towns, in your neighborhoods. This could even be, I like what the moon in Venus just in general are just really nurturing aspects. They're very that closely. Even Venus could be was indicative of the mother, and so this idea of creating this sort of nurturing environment, taking care of oneself, taking care of the body. That moon trine Venus. I really like when those two come together like that, and have that harmony there. I think that's a real sweet placement for, and real sweet aspect when you have those trines with Venus, or either with Venus or Big Papa. Those are generally very, very nice to have those there. This could hopefully maybe even be some sort of, maybe we see some sort of relief in the markets, where, or some sort of adjustments, or some sort of initiatives taken to alleviate some sort of the spending, because Venus was one that could deal with the weights and measures of the markets and the factories. And this could even be maybe some sort of gift being received, or some being bestowed upon someone coming into some kind of celebration, whatever that happens to look like. Inventors, maybe new art that's potentially coming out, new music for people to appreciate, maybe something big coming through there, something to stir the fire when we think about all that fire energy that's in the mix. So that even could be a potentially nice thing that's happening there. And then after we get that nice little bit of loveliness, the moon's going to move into Virgo at about 12:33 p.m. Pacific time. And I have that chart up here on this slide. Now, when you think about this again on a personal level, think about the house that Virgo rules for you. And think about too, as the moon is. I always invite to, as you're thinking about this, how a moon trine feels in your chart to, let's say, to your natal Venus, or to your or in opposition to your natal Sun, or to your natal Saturn, or square to your whatever that happens to look like, and compare those times and notice when you notice how those themes tend to be more easier, or when things tend to be harder. And if it's not, if there's, let's say you have a trine but it still feels tough, maybe there's some other squares and things that are going on in your chart, or oppositions. And so how these times can get complicated and be more complex when you're working with this stuff. But yeah, thinking about what house you have and what themes that represents that Virgo house or houses that happens to be that Virgo's responsible for, or that Virgo falls under. And if this is one that's going to be especially more active, if you have, think about the mutable parts of our chart, if you have Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, or Gemini, again, this would be more active, or would be more active for you. So when we look at the lay of the land for this one is a bit of a tougher one. We're not going to get to what's going to be the hardest aspect, which will be that moon opposing Mars. Those are usually been, but I would pay attention to the buildup that's going to be happening here, because there's going to be, with the lay of the land, the moon is now it's getting out of view of Saturn, the Sun, and Venus, or at least until Venus moves into Taurus. But it's getting out of view of them for a little bit, but now it's coming into view of Jupiter, which we like. But it's going to have this oppositions with Mercury and Mars that's going to be happening. Again, that Mars one's going to be the hardest one, and that's what's going to be as soon. And this is where, when we pay attention by why I work with whole sign, because as soon as the planet enters 0 degrees, like it is on this chart here, the aspect is on. This opposition energy is on, and it's just going to keep getting more intense as they get closer to becoming exact. And let's talk about that next one here, because that first opposition on the 30th, that's going to happen. This is the last day that we're going to be talking about here, on the 30th of March, is going to be that opposition with Mercury. And the oppositions are when the celestial bodies are 180 degrees apart from one another, so in opposite signs here. And they're thought to be the hardest aspects that we can deal with. And so when we have something tense with Mercury, there could be something that's going on. Mercury was was another one that could deal with, was considered the creator of all marketing, of bankings. So there could be of coinage, the weighing and measuring, similar to Venus. And so we could see some sort of challenges that are potentially happening there, or just some sort of communication that's coming through. Maybe we receive some sort of news, or some sort of things of something that's happening there. This could be Mercury was one that, especially since it's co-present with Mars, and it's Mercury starting to pick up speed again. It's chasing after Mars, and it's going to catch up with Mars right when it meets up with Saturn. And so there's something that's building up with this. And Mercury was already by itself thought to be a bit kind of mischievous. There's a theft aspect that comes with Mercury, so this could be some sort of trickery that's happening. I'd even be mindful of, or pay attention to any sort of things that's delivered that doesn't make sense. That especially in Pisces, some kind of communication that comes through where the terms are seeming ambiguous, or you're just open to interpretations, trying to pull some fast ones. When we think about Mercury will, it's tricky with its words. There's Jupiter that it has an aspect with Jupiter too, so I don't feel like it's all confusion that's going on there. But I do think that that's just something to pay attention to, things that just seem unusual. That may be something that comes up there, but that even that Mercury opposition that can come up too. This could be where we notice that maybe there was a recent discovery or a recent endeavor, some sort of thing that was getting ready to get started up, and now it's met with some sort of challenge that's happening. Whenever we're coming across new inventions and things, like let's say like how we're working with incorporating AI and stuff, there comes these test rounds that happens. I remember when I used to work at this restaurant, and they had introduced the portable handhelds instead of taking notes for your orders. At first, I wasn't about it. I wasn't about it, and when I left, I still wasn't crazy about it. But I understand the convenience of it, and I think that's where that moon sextile Jupiter's coming through. That's some niceness that's coming there. That's gonna happen at about, I got that aspect up here of the moon sextile Jupiter, and that's a more positive aspect. There's some kind of opportunity here. So let's say when you meet those roadblocks, if you just give something a chance, maybe it turns out to be better than we thought. We end up having a bit more faith in something, not initially discarding a message that, or when things don't happen to, when the numbers aren't adding up in things along those lines. When I think with Mercury, but that can create an opportunity to just try something a little different, make some kind of tweak, some sort of things along those lines. There could be, this even gives me the idea, and let me go ahead and I think I'm going to go, let me see if I can find my mouse. I'm going to go ahead and switch over. But this even gives me the kind of feel of, what was I going to say? I had something really good for that one too. Man. It's got away from me. That's fine. But yeah, this kind of ends on a, it gives me some kind of mixed bag here. It gives that, like, especially with things building up to Mars, it gives this message that something we're going to do, an announcement that comes through, and it's like we have to really stretch to find the good out of this with that Jupiter. That can be another way to kind of work with it, or maybe see how that could potentially come up in the mundane sense. But man, I hate that other one fell out of my head there, man. But that's all right. That's probably something that I need to wrap up anyway. But that's pretty much the week for us. We end on that cliffhanger as we build up to that opposition there. And yeah, it'll actually be a series of oppositions that we're gonna have with the malefics. So this will be this week going into that, and going into next week may be a little bit of trickiness that's coming through. Again, Big Papa's there. We're able to, I think, kind of trying to help soften that. So I think we'll hopefully navigate this thing as best we can, as we do each week. But hopefully like that. Hopefully you found that useful and helpful. And let me know how this, if you notice how certain things come up, if there's certain changes in your environments or certain things along those lines, maybe something that comes up in your household, or maybe something you notice in your travels, whatever this happens to be. I think that paying attention to the moon can be really insightful in seeing how how things change, and how things change on a regular basis, and how we all adapt to the changes that are potentially coming there. So, and I think the moon is a good indicator of, because we get those monthly that happens, it helps us to conceptualize and orient ourselves through when we have those kind of longer terms, or kind of longer planets, when you have like Sun Saturn conjunctions, or when you have like the Mars conjunctions that happen with Saturn every couple of years, but we get one with the moon once a month, and we get to get a feel of how that could potentially materialize on a grander scale. So, but yeah, because I would say this past week, let's see, because when we went from Aries to, I think last week we went from Pisces to about Gemini. Yeah, this one wasn't a not too bad of a week for me. I'm getting more progress on my course study, so that's been really good. I'm starting to get into the bulk of it, get into the bulk of it now. So that's been really exciting because I got a bunch of stuff going through my ninth house right now with the Sun, Saturn, and Venus entering there. Actually, at the end of the week, Venus moves into Taurus, so it's going to get my career house soon. So that's something I've been thinking about. I got to get back on some things. So get back to putting some videos. But yeah, that's not been bad. It's been nice having Mars in a more quieter part of my of my chart there. It was a little tricky at the beginning, and we'll see what is coming up on another hard aspect with the point that I'm going to kind of keep an eye out there for. But otherwise, not too bad. I'm appreciating areas I've been resetting. You know, just kind of just getting back into the. I'm noticing there's some changes that are happening, and they feel good. Especially that Mars is trining my Sun, and so that's been feeling really good. I've been feeling just more energized, and especially in that sense of when that's will in that sense. So that's been really nice. I'm riding that wave. I'm riding that wave because Mars moves into Aries. It's gonna be a different story. but but yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear how this week has been treating you, and yeah, definitely let me know. And down in the description box, if you want to book a consultation with me to see how these transits are showing up in your chart, there's a link to book a consultation with me. So definitely avail yourself of that. If you have any questions for me, my email's down there for me. So definitely feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the services that I provide. I have a couple links for the playlist for the Lunar Shenanigans and for the Celestial News Monthly. I'm actually going to get ready to the monthly one will come out it'll come out this Thursday, and then I'm going to have the episode for the Lucky Day podcast for my Patreon. That's going to come out on the 28th. That's my plan. That I'm actually going to be getting ready to probably record that one here, if not today, tomorrow. So those are going to be available for you here this week, so definitely check that out. And then, I have these videos in which I'm going to be, one of the things I'm going to be getting back on track with is I have these series of videos talk about different celestial bodies in different zodiac signs in different places. So if that's something that you want to see and how to interpret that and get delineations from your own natal chart and start to form that relationship with the different topics of your life, that's available for you as well. But yeah, that's all I got for you. So until next time, stay mindful out there. You keep eyes on that moon, and let me know if you're able to see Mars and see Mercury, because they should still, they're still visible right now. You should be able to see them rising. So let me know, and we'll be able to definitely see more of Mars rising as things going on there. So I'm curious to see how that's gonna translate, and I will catch you on the next one. Later.